Hey there, team. Amanda here, joining you with Avon for this episode of the Business Octopus. Avon, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's warm.
It is warm. It is warm. We've had quite a few storms. It's just, a nice hectic heat at the moment, which is fantastic. Terrible segue. Today's episode, though, is all about the dangers of default thinking. Now, Avon, you said something to me the other day that got me thinking. If everyone is thinking the same thing, no one is thinking. So I'm curious, what's your take on default thinking?
It's like, the human mind processes a lot of information. And, when you're like, I don't know if you ever do something new, you get trained in some new thing, or you're at a new job or something, and your brain is so active that at the end of the day, you just feel absolutely tired and run down. And so your brain tries to automate as much as possible. That could be, all right, well, I don't need to look at that thing and study it because I've seen it before. And so even if you see something out of your periphery of your vision, you know that it's familiar. You don't have to process it. There's nothing too terribly different about it. And so the default thinking, I guess, on a lizard brain level is a little bit like that. But then default thinking flows into other things. So you kind of set your mind as though this is the way X or Y is. And like, for example, in business, but then you don't, revisit these thoughts. Sometimes things change, but because you've just already put it in that category, you don't then look at it any other way. And I think that's probably the crux of the problem and or issue here.
100%. And you nailed it. Business and life is not set and forget. Things move really quickly. What did Ferris Bueller say? Life moves pretty fast, right? So we need to continue to evolve and question things. So we should be questioning what we're doing in our lives, in our business. If we've done something continually the same way for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, we need to get curious and we need to question the way we are doing things. And the other one, Avon, you brought up the other day as well, is we should question why we're doing something in the first place, right?
Yeah. This whole thing of that's the way we've always done it. I went into an organization, we started doing it like a process review. And at the end of this one process was like, sign in the purple book. It's like, who signs in the purple book? Why do we sign in the purple book? What then happens with it afterwards? Absolutely nothing. It was this totally redundant process that always done. And it just gets put back in the cupboard and no one ever looks at it. So
wow. Okay. And was that just so they didn't actually need a purple book? Is that what you're telling me?
No, like it would have been good to know why it was purple to begin with. But, like it's just a completely redundant process. And I know that a lot of businesses sort of do that just because they feel that, oh, well, we've always done it that way, like it sounds a little cliche when it comes to all of the business talks. Like if that's the way we've always done it. But, I think it can creep up on you more than you think, because sometimes whilst people joke at that statement, they don't actually think about what it really means and then take that on board.
100%. And one thing I wanted to dig into here, and you may not have heard me say this, something I ask all my clients when I notice that they're getting stuck in that default thinking: are you on a mission or an adventure? So a mission is a clear goal or purpose. So generally in business, it's tied to a specific outcome or a KPI or a structured plan. So being mission driven, essential in business. Would you agree, Avon? We have to be focused on outcomes and on the mission, right?
Yes. Although for some people, they seem to be inputs focused. Like I've done this many things, but they don't actually end up seeing what the mission is or the vision is. They just know they're in a box. They got to do that one thing.
And this is it, right? We follow the system or the process, and it's like, yes, I did this many things, and that's what leads us into default thinking if our focus becomes too narrow on these inputs, like you're saying, right? So while missions are crucial, we also need to go on adventures in our business. So this is where we become curious. Exploration, curiosity, adaptability, and a willingness to change the way we've always done things based on the questions that we've asked or the exploration that we've done. So by thinking in that way, we're more likely to challenge our assumptions and experiment with different ideas, and also find better ways of doing things. So question for you, Avon, what's the latest adventure that you've adventured on in your business? Where did you challenge the way you're doing things?
I kind of do it all day, every day, because we try. That's what we do for our customers generally. But one thing that keeps coming back is this thought of how we want to build a particular application, and so we've kind of scrappily put things together in spreadsheets. And we're the company that stops people putting things scrappily into spreadsheets and starts formalizing it into systems. But in order to do this one, we can't use like an off-the-shelf tool and configure it. We have to build something from the ground up. And whilst we do that for other people, it's a big undertaking even to do it for yourself. So the adventure is figuring out, from the ground up, a product that people want, why they want it, and then build it in a test version, and then get people using it, and then improve it from there. So that is very much as an adventure. There's a lot of new stuff there.
Absolutely. And once you've been on that adventure with the client, how do you then turn it into the mission side of things? So it's a set of systems and processes that we're using on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that we can then go back and interrogate later.
Well, once you've broken new ground, once you've done that initial discovery of the system, the process, the roadmap, whatever, every time you go back and you iterate on that, you're basically going back and doing 80% of the same things with a little bit of a change. So that then becomes familiar, and it's a lot easier at that point. But it's that very first, blank canvas, getting past an empty page. You call it writer's block, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's not to say, as much as we're saying, dangers of default thinking, we're not asking you to reinvent the wheel every 3 months either. So drilling in on exactly what Avon just said, we might have 80% that stays the same because we're discovering what works, we're doing more of that, and then we're tweaking the 20% where the opportunities are, right?
I think a lot of it can happen when it comes to people. Like you might, have an interaction with someone, and then you put them in this bucket and you go, oh, well, that's all that they can do. And over time, people learn things, people change, people grow and develop. And so if you don't sit there and revisit that, then you're always going to think of this one person as such, and then they're going to, feel as though they're misunderstood or undervalued after a certain period of time as their value increases. And then once you put them in the bucket, you're going to lose them. So reviewing default thinking on people is probably one of the most important things you could do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So how do you make sure that you're doing that regularly?
One-to-ones,
Yes.
walk the halls, talk to people, make observations. I like to keep some notes because at the time I might have been thinking a particular thing, and then maybe in a different frame of mind, you go and talk to that same person. You might have a completely different perspective. Maybe they were having an off day, you were having an off day. So you need a lot of data points. So look for data points, look for trends, look for change, and then adjust to it.
I love that. And do you also, if you're feeling a particular way towards a particular person, do you get input from other people around you as well?
Definitely. I think that, 360-degree review, in fact, we do it back the other way as well, as we ask our team to review us. And so, you could have your own default thinking about your own behaviors just as much as you could have about other people. And default thinking, not only people, but on systems and things like that. Like I asked for some feedback on a particular software product that I've been producing. And this person came in not knowing how their feedback would be taken. So they gave me a little bit less. And but the fact that I actually asked for feedback instead of build the thing and then said, here you go, people, this is what you must use. I'm constantly looking for, where did I go wrong? How can I be better? And I think if you've got that approach, then that almost destroys the concept of default thinking anyway.
Absolutely. If you're proactively seeking feedback. And I think for a lot of people, it feels awkward or maybe a bit vulnerable asking for feedback, whether it's about how we showed up in a particular situation or a particular project that we delivered. But if you create that as a habit and it just becomes part of what you're doing, you will actually run towards it because you see it as an opportunity to improve.
On that, like in building the Relevate community, early on, because I've only got 10 fingers and 80 hours, or like 24 hours in a day, 8 of which I have to sleep, and a few other things in between. But as I was building out the community, people are saying, "Oh, you should have this and should have that, and why doesn't it have this and why doesn't it have that?" And I was getting so much feedback on what was wrong. But instead of like taking it personally and trying to be turn it back around on them or anything like that, I just either write it down and like put it in my hit list, and then just work really hard on fixing that one thing where I got the feedback from. So I think that whilst default thinking helps you shortcut things, taking that adventurous approach on how you improve things is good for new and innovative things. I think sometimes default thinking can be beneficial in that when there is so much, like we were saying before, like you're in a new environment, everything is pretty full on and like crazy. I remember, first sort of couple of weeks in the army where everything is camouflage. You wake up, you're in camouflage, you go to sleep, you dream it, you wake up the next day not knowing what was real, what was fake. Everything is so new, everything is so full on, and it's really draining. You take a kid to school for the first time, and there's all this noise and other kids and screaming and new rules and people and smells and tastes, and they come home and they're like dead to the world for 16 hours.
100%.
So default thinking is valuable in that some things you do need to automate, but as long as you create that space for review and rechecking your default thinking, or your default settings, or your autopilot functions. I know there's plenty of times I've been driving home, maybe we moved office or done something in this area, and now we're doing it in that area. You switch off, you drive, and you wake up, you realize you're in the old area and go, how did I get here?
Exactly. Yes. Been there too. Wild.
Yeah, I've been there several times. But well, I think in terms of being on autopilot, I think it's good to be conscious of how much time you spend on autopilot, and maybe there's some things that you stress over too much that you need to kind of like mentally set yourself as being on autopilot.
This is true. Absolutely. Especially as business owners, things that we give mental real estate to, that we should just have default decisions pre-made. And like I heard a lady the other day, I can't remember where it was. She was a business owner, and she, instead of her stressing about her exercise routine, she spent 30 minutes doing the same exercise routine every day at the same time. The decision was already made, and it meant that she moved every day. And that for her, in her phase of her business, in her phase of her life, that was all that mattered. So, as much as we're saying the dangers, it can also be super beneficial if you're using it correctly.
Thinking of it in a commercial sense, there's a field of study called heuristics, and that is the most likely default decision of your target market audience or whatever. So in supermarkets, they know that about 60 or 70% of the time when people go into the shop, they turn right. And so they place all the fresh food and vegetables and the most inviting things on the right, and all the things they want you to see first. And the thing maybe that you need to spend a bit of time digging through the shop to get to, but to see, a million other products way down in the corner where, you have to get all the way there to get the milk, for example, way in the back corner.
Yes. Yeah.
And those layouts using heuristics, and now with AI, mostly uses heuristics, where if they have some ambiguity about how people are going to make decisions. For example, a Tesla on the road has a decision rule set saying that 60% of the time, the car in front of you is going to brake when this situation occurs. And so it uses that predictive analytics to kind of make decision or shortcut its decision rules. But it has those because people have default decisions. And majority of the time, they're, one particular way over another. Not everyone's the same, granted, But like if it was a big enough deal for a shopping center to completely change their layout, because most people turn right as soon as they walk into a shop, it has real commercial value to understand. So I would Google it if you're listening. Go to look up heuristics.
Yeah, check that out. Yes.
And sorry, guys.
No, I was going to say, like, I was aware of the concept, milk and bread at the back, make them walk as far as they have to walk, past all the specials, all the treats. Now I know what to look for as an area of study.
There's hundreds of them, and you can probably use them in your brand. Like people want to see this before they see that on a landing page. When people fill out a form, they want to, answer this way instead of that way. All little things, I mean, now we're getting into the nitty gritty, but if it matters, like dealing with your traffic and A/B testing, then you're probably going to get a pretty good idea of what to do before you start testing, just by looking at heuristics.
There you go. Avon, thank you for that hot tip. Very cool. Very cool. Now, one thing I did want to touch on, team, is one of our more famous examples of not being willing to challenge our own default thinking. And there's quite a few famous examples. And it's when a company didn't see the disruption that was about to happen in their industry. Now, personal story of mine, I had the pleasure of working at Blockbuster Video as my first job. And I was there at the stage when half the store was VHS and half the store was DVD. And I very vividly remember my boss at the time saying, oh, Blu-ray will never take off. So this is even before Netflix sort of had come on the scene. And that was very ignorant of him, because Blu-ray did indeed take off. And then later on, I remember visiting a Blockbuster store when I had since moved on, and we were talking with the owner about Netflix. So Netflix at the time was a service where they posted DVDs out to your house. Do you remember those days, Avon? Were you ever a subscriber to the...
No, I actually I did hire videos from Blockbuster though.
Oh, very good. Respect. It was superior to Video Easy for those playing at home. It was. Also, so Netflix had this service where you could go on their website and you could order all these obscure TV shows that Amanda used to watch, like Due South. I remember being able to get these really obscure TV shows that I really love to watch. So they were offering things that Blockbuster and Video Easy and Network Video weren't able to offer, because they had this massive warehouse that they could ship anywhere in the country. So there was that first layer of disruption that happened. And then secondly, of course, as internet services became more stable and had higher bandwidths, Netflix decided to move digital, and Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy them, stuck their heels in the sand and said, people won't want to do that. People will not want to watch things in their home. They will want to come out to Blockbuster on a Friday night and rent a movie. We all know how that ended.
Did you ever read there was like something about the board reporting or the board minutes? There was something in the works at Blockbuster that was going to be better theoretically than Netflix. And the thing that killed it was actually internal politics and, them not necessarily being the owners of the company. They're the CEO, board managers of the company. And so because they weren't personally invested in the outcome, they went for the share price and cut a project. And what they could have done is absolutely smash Netflix. And I think they even come up with the idea first. Right.
Okay. There you go. So
it's almost like Kodak with having the film before the digital camera. So they invented their own demise.
They did, except they just didn't sort of
run
with it. They had this little, I remember having a Kodak digital camera, but they still just kept being a film company, right? That had this digital camera as well. Whereas your Sonys and your Canons and your Panasonics lent rather really heavily into that digital revolution in cameras, and they came out victorious. And now all the kids want film cameras. So it's all just come back around anyway. And even old VHS media, everything's just coming back into fashion. Not obviously that you could build multi national corporations out of it, but still, it's all just coming back around again.
Well, I was on an international flight with Emirates, and they come around and they took Polaroid photos of the passengers.
How lovely! That's
and
so good.
And you sit there and you shake it like a Polaroid picture, singing "Hey Ya," and then you put it in your little frame, and away you go.
See, that's delightful. See, little things like that. See, and I'm sure I'm not the first person you've told about that. Everyone's going to be thinking, I want my Polaroid picture on an Emirates flight, right?
Yeah, well, they went around. I guess, on the first flight, it was all right because it was daytime. On the second flight, everyone was trying to sleep. And so there's just this giant flash booming. But the concept was really cool. And I think, we did like the idea that of getting a photo. So, and it's not like they charge you anymore. They like take the photo, give you the slip, and put it in the little thing. Thank you very much. Go to the next seat, and just keep walking up and down the plane. It was a nice experience, particularly on a long haul flight.
100%. And it's those little things. I know we're sort of going off topic here, but it's little things like that you do over and above for your client or customer experience that aren't necessarily in the product description, if you like, that will get people talking and make them feel like they had a genuinely amazing connection and experience with your brand.
Well, it's not completely disconnected from our topic, because if the default thinking is just carry on with the flight like usual, then it's not going to be an experience. But if you step outside and do something a little bit innovative, unique, and different, now you've made it something memorable. And I've now mentioned a brand and talk about it, not only to you, but to everybody listening. And that was purely because an experience that they created, which was not necessarily default thinking.
100%, 100%. And another aspect of that, so Walt Disney, I can't believe I've made it to this many live streams without talking about Walt Disney. Walt Disney had a concept called plussing. So he was the antithesis of default thinking. So he would always ask his Imagineers, whether it was rides out in the park or whether it was a parade or a night show, what can we do to plus this experience? So he would talk about plussing it. So in that example, Emirates have plussed the long haul flight experience by including the Polaroid photo of families and individuals going on their next adventure while on their plane. And one of the most famous pluses that Walt Disney did was there's a ride called, it's not a ride, and it's an experience called the Tiki Room, which has animatronic birds. Have you heard of that one, Avon?
I think I have. Yeah.
You have?
Might have even been there. Yep.
Oh, very cool. So the Tiki Room has these animatronic birds, and he told his Imagineers, I want the birds to breathe. They sing, they dance, I want them to breathe. And the Imagineers were confused because you wouldn't be able to see them breathing. And if you look, you can't see them breathe. But every single one of those birds breathes. You can't see it, but you can feel it. And these Imagineers were saying they noticed the difference immediately when they went in to the experience before and after they added this breathing for the birds. And it's like little tiny tweaks like that, little tiny pluses that can make all the difference to an experience for your clients.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good one. That's almost a wrap.
It is almost a wrap. What a story to end on.
Yeah. Animatronics. Well, before the robots take over the world.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
The birds will be drones in the skies. And so who cares if they're breathing? Because they're like...
Yeah. Skynet's coming.
Exactly. 100%. 100%. Team, thank you so much for joining us. Avon, have you got a couple of updates that you want to share with everyone?
Well, we do have our Brisbane face-to-face catch-ups coming this week, or this upcoming week on Tuesday. We're doing our weekly Zooms in the Relevate community on the Monday nights. And if you're wondering where to go, you can click or search the link just in the chat below. Jump on and come and say hello, join the network. And we're starting groups in Sydney and Melbourne soon. But other than that, thank you for watching. That's all from me.
Awesome, team. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.